Shoki Bhaktir Bhavati Naistiki Nigamau Kapudurugaritam Param Shukamakaramicha Dravi Samyatam Pibata Bhagatam Rashamalayam Mahora Hora Sika Bhuvi Bhagbukaham Krishna Swadamapagate Dharmagini Karonashta Vishamasha Paranako Dunoditaham Twamapi Adabashuta Vishwatam Vibhu Samapyayana Vidambaruksaram Prakyahidu Harmaditam Sanklesha Nirvana Musanti Nanyataham Atmaramascha Munaya Nagranti Api Horakanke Korbanti Haitaki Paramitam Buddha Ganari Om Aganati Maranda Shangarangana Sadakya Chaksurun Miritam Yanatashmai Sri Gurvedam Sri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yanabhutare Swayam Rupa Karamayam Darati Swapanandikam Vandeham Sri Guru Siyata Parkamaram Sri Gurun Vaishnavam Scha Sri Rupam Sagadatam Sahagana Raganatam Vitam Stam Sajevam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Paran Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakan Vitam Stam Namam Vishnu Paraya Krishna Pastaya Bhutare Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Tanamane Namaste Sarasati Devi Gauravani Pacharine Vishesa Sunyavadi Praskadade Satarine Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasati Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Ram Rama Hare Hare. Thanks for joining us, Rob, on Zoom. Good to have you back, Rob. Look forward to I hope you're able to give us some takeaways at the end. We kind of missed those. I was telling Rob before we started that when I travel, I think I figured out a way that I can continue these classes while I'm traveling, but it doesn't involve Zoom. Usually I go to Zoom because Rob doesn't have Facebook, so I go to Zoom. And then through Zoom, we go to the Facebook stream. And I'll still be able to do that when I'm here, but when I'm traveling, it's a little complicated to do all that with your phone. So I can just use my phone to go directly on Facebook Live. So I won't be able to go on Zoom when I'm traveling, but I can reach all you on Facebook Live. And if Rob can switch over to Facebook Live, then we'll have the benefit of his association and even his takeaways as well, hopefully. But anyway, our hope is that we'll be able to continue these Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday sessions uninterruptedly. Leah or Lilavati checks in from Baker, Nevada. I know where Baker, California is. I can't imagine where Baker, Nevada is. She sent me a picture, or rather, she posted a picture that I saw on Facebook yesterday called Museum of the Future. She's somewhere out in the desert, and it's just this old shack. It's in great state of disrepair. I was thinking, what does that mean, Museum of the Future? And I won't enunciate. I won't tell you what thoughts came to mind, but what doomsday thoughts came to mind that this would be the museum. This would be our future. Shacks in the middle of the desert, no longer cities or skyscraper buildings or luxury resorts or airports or air travel or anything. Museum of the Future, a broken down shack in the middle of desolation. That reminds me of a poem. I was speaking with a godbrother a few months ago. Actually, his name is Guru Granga. I think I've told this story. I think if you've listened to me for all these, you've heard all of my stories. So I'm not going to worry about repeating myself. I was talking to Guru Granga, and Guru Granga's, I respect him highly. He's a great Yale graduate. He's a lawyer, and he has an incredible vocabulary. One of the most articulate human beings I've ever conversed with. We were talking on the phone. He just out of the blue, he said, "Have you ever heard of the poem Ozymandias?" And I'm a little hard of hearing, so sometimes I ask people to repeat things, especially over the phone. I said, "What did you say?" He says, "Have you ever heard of the poem Ozymandias?" Well, he couldn't see me, but I lit up on the other side of the phone. And I thought, this thought came to me and to my ego like a bolt of lightning. Here I can show off. Here's a golden opportunity handed to me on a silver platter to show off my erudition in front of somebody who I admire. True, you've got a long way to go. in any case, I started rattling off this poem to Guru Ganga's great astonishment. And he said, True, stop, 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 stop. You know, because I was tripping over myself to show off to him that, yeah, I had this poem memorized. He says, True, stop, start over and do it slowly so we can relish it. So here it is. My name, wait a minute. I met a traveler from an antique land who said to vast and trunkless legs of stone, stand half sunk in the desert. Beside them a shattered visage lies whose sneer and wrinkled lip and frown of cold command tell that well the sculpture those passions read which yet survive stamped on those lifeless things the hand that mocked them and the heart that fed. And on the pedestal these words appear. My name is Ozymandias, King of Kings. Look on my works, ye mighty, and despair. Nothing beside remains. Round the decay of that colossal wreck, boundless and bare, the lone and level sands stretch far away. So in the same way that broken down shack in the middle of desert may come to be the museum of the future. It may be all that our technologically advanced civilization reduces down to. In the same way, it reminds me of that pedestal uh, on which the broken statue used to stand before it got defaced and displaced, on which this words appear, my name is Ozymandias, King of Kings, look on my works, ye mighty in despair. We could say the same thing of the American empire, which as far as empires go, relatively, when it stacks up against other empires of the past, it's been, I mean, in some ways inhumane, some ways exploitative, in some ways it's also held up virtues of compassion and care, aid and assistance, wherever there have been emergencies all over the world. The American empire has not been indifferent to the sufferings of all. It's one at the same time caused a lot of suffering, but it's also at the same time helped out in areas of crisis. And anyway, the point is not to judge goodness or badness. Our point is that this material world, everything is temporary. This too shall pass away, which reminds me of another poem in this regard. Once in India reigned a king who upon a signet grain engraved a maxim true and wise, which if held before the eyes, gave him counsel at a glance, fit for every change and chance, solemn words, and these were they. Yeah, you guessed it, even this will pass away. Trains of camels through the sands, brought him gems from Samarkand, fleets of galleys through the seas, brought him pearls to match with these, but he counted not his gain, treasures of the minor main. Wealth may come, but not to stay. Even this will pass away. In the revels of the court at the zenith of the sport, when the palms of all his guests burned with clapping at his jests, said the king amid his figs and wine, O loving friends of mine, pleasure comes but not to stay. Even this will pass away. Fairest lady ever seen, he made his bride and crowned his queen. Pillowed on the marriage bed, whispering to his soul, he said, bridegroom never pressed fair of bosom to his breast, but mortal flesh will come to clay. Even this will pass away. Fighting on a furious field, once a javelin pierced his shield. Soldier with a loud lament, bore him bleeding to his tent, groaning from his tortured side, pain is hard to bear, he cried. But with patience, day by day, even this will pass away. Towering in the public square, 20 feet in the air, stood his statue carved in stone. Then the king disguised, unknown, stood before his sculptured name, musing meekly, what is fame? Fame is but a slow decay. Even this will pass away. Struck with palsy, wise and old, waiting at the gates of gold, said the king with his dying breath, life is done, but what is death? Then answered the king, fell a sunbeam on his ring, showing by a heavenly ray, even this will pass away, even this will pass away, even this will pass away. So we haven't even started our philosophy. We're just spent 10 minutes commenting, I hope accurately, I hope pertinently, on a picture that Lilavati posted while she's traveling somewhere in the Nevada desert Thanks for joining us, Natasha. Hare Krishna. Good morning. Brent's also on board as well. If anyone would like to, they could tell us where the world is. Baker, Nevada. I know where Baker, California is. One time we were driving back, it's been 2012 or 13. We'd just done a Festival of Colors in Norwalk, California, Los Angeles. And I was driving back to Utah with our truck, a newly purchased truck from Christensen's used truck sales in Lehi, Utah. And I was so confident and cocky in the power of this truck, recently purchased, that I told the other devotees in the cars to go on ahead and I would follow them in the truck. Well, there's a huge hill. Actually, there's a pair of hills just north of Baker, Nevada. Baker is, I think, one of the lowest spots in America. But right after you pass Baker on your left-hand side, you start going up and up and up and up. And then you go flat, then you go up again. It's a huge climb. I think it's a 13-mile climb. And then you drop down to Prim, Nevada. So anyway, long story short, the truck, overheated. I nursed it through the next few hours. I nursed it into Las Vegas. And no sooner I reached Las Vegas, and coincidentally, I was just abreast of the exit to the International Truck Repair Place. I forget the name of it there on Charles Street, I believe, when the engine blew up. Huge smoke and steam started going. Anyway, that's a story for another day. But Baker, Nevada, I can't even imagine where that is. But Lilavati will make the most of the experience, I have no doubt. Speaking of experiences, we had Patri, an amazing devotee, speak to us. Saturday morning, spoke before 200 members of the Utah Nepali Association in the temple room up there in Salt Lake City. Spoke in fluent Nepali, sang songs in Nepali, told jokes in Nepali. I sat through the whole thing. I couldn't understand a word he said, but I enjoyed it. I had a big smile on his face because I could appreciate how animated he was, how humorous he was. He used to be an actor and a mime. So he has a lot of, he has a very supple face and lips. He makes many, many sound effects to illustrate his points and compliment what he's saying. Very, very absorbing, very entertaining, great speaker, and obviously quite successfully has established 60 centers in Nepal. Speaks Nepali, Hindi, Bengali, Sinhalese, Russian, Ukrainian, and English are the ones I know of, all fluently. He knows verses. He can quote verses like the wind. And with great intelligence, he punctuates his talks with jokes. And he's very good. He's a very good comedian. So when he tells the jokes, it really, really cracks the audience up. One thing he said wasn't exactly a joke, but he said that while he's chanting, everyone should clap. And he quoted some statistics that people who clap 100 times a day have lower blood pressure, live longer, they're more free of tension. So it was after sharing that information, everybody was clapping. Everybody's clapping. So later on during Arti, he was standing beside me and we were clapping. And I wanted to make a joke. So I turned to him and I said, 61, 62, 63, 64. He smiled. He got it. But then I said, the problem is I'm not thinking of chanting. I'm thinking of counting and clapping. He said, well, devotees should go like this. I thought that was pretty funny. So we had a chuckle right there in the middle of Arti. He really enjoyed this project. He loved the temple in Salt Lake City. He loved the project here. He loved the animals, the parrots, the peacocks. And we have a new best friend in Patri. And his disciple, his follower, his devoted follower, Namamrita, is here full time with his wonderful wife, Bhakti Janani, doing pujari service. Okay, so let's talk about the subject at hand. We discussed Wisdom Wednesday last week, our third and last session of the previous week. The variety, the variegatedness of this creation. Nitya Nityanam Chaitanya Chaitanya Ekyo, one single living being. He's one. And yet whatever there is in terms of variety proceeds from that one singularity. Advaitam Achutam Anadum Anantarupam. That one unlimited, omnipotent, omniscient, surpassingly beautiful, famous, wealthy, humble. From that one source, Ishvara Parama Krishna Satchit Ananda Vigraha, comes all the variegatedness, both of the spiritual world and the material world itself. Now, compared to the spiritual world, the material world is insignificant. It's the material world in which we reside is no more substantial from the spiritual point of view than a cloud in the spiritual world. We look up in the sky and we see a cloud. And we know it's vaporous, consists of evaporated water from the ocean. It's insubstantial, it's wispy, ethereal. It's there today, gone tomorrow. It's there this minute, gone the next minute. We know that if we look at the cloud and then engage ourselves in something and then look back up at the sky an hour from now, that cloud will no longer be there. It will have transmutated, permutated, it may have dissipated altogether. This material creation, which consists of innumerable universes, innumerable galaxies and Milky Ways and suns and stars, 7 planetary systems, up and down the lotus stem of Lord Brahma's flower, roughly categorized into Bhur-Bhuva-Shraha, lower, middle, and upper planetary systems. The whole kit and boodle, the whole shebang is temporary. A Brahma Bhuvanalaka Pranarvichina Mama Petuna Pranarjanmanavidite. The whole arrangement, the whole elaborate creation is subject to birth, death, disease, and old age. It has a time of beginning, it has a time of growth, it has a time of duration, it has a time of reproduction, it has a time wherein it dwindles and then it vanishes. Everything, including Lord Brahma himself, this whole material creation. And all of that is as insubstantial as a cloud in the spiritual world. And yet the Lord has created this material world, although it's cloud-like, it's wispy, it's ephemeral, it's temporary, it's constantly in mutation, it's always changing, has none of the stability of the spiritual world, of which it is a perverted relaxation. Nevertheless, this reflected world, this imitation world, there's a few things we can say about it. One is that it supplies all the necessities of life for the many, many living entities who have left the spiritual world and come here. Because we're exiled from our original home, the spiritual world, because we don't care to focus on and serve our Creator, the Supreme Personality of God, who loves us and who has our best interests at heart, because we're so, in spite of the fact that we're foolish, ungrateful. One of the catchphrases of Patri, which he repeated several times, and it took root in my brain. He says, if you're not grateful, you're a grateful. Get it? If you're not grateful, you're a grateful. So those of us who are not grateful to the Lord, even though we manifested in the spiritual world, we still became great fools because we didn't want to remain in the spiritual world. We wanted to come to this material world. So we live here more or less as exiles in the prison house of this material world, having turned our backs on God. Yet he's so kind. He loves us so much that he doesn't begrudge us all the necessities of life. He supplies us with bodies according to our karma, according to our psychology, according to our desires. There are goodness, passion, ignorance are the 3 modes of material nature. Urdvam gachanti sattva madhya dashanti jigani guna madhya dashanti rajasaha. Whether we're colored more in goodness, more in passion, more igneous, determines which birth we're going to take, whether it be in the higher, the middle, the lower planetary systems at any given point in time. So wherever we may find ourselves, upper, middle, lower planetary systems, in which of the 8,400,000 species of life, the Lord has provided us with bodies according to our psychology, according to the modes of material nature. He supplied us with food. Some of us are food for others, but that's another story. He supplied us with shelter. He's endowed us with recreational abilities. When you think about it, in spite of the rhetoric about overpopulation and scarcities and lack, climate change, acid rain, glacial meltdown, in spite of all these doomsday predictions, the world itself, left clean, unsullied, untampered with, if you just look at the world as a repository, as a reservoir, with the basic prioritized purposes of supplying us with food, shelter, and reproductive facilities, there's no scarcity. There's no lack. However many people populate this planet, were we not to trash it, were we not to pollute the water and the air and the climate, were we to live a simple life, Anad Bhavati Bhutani Parjanyata, Yagat Samrabha, Yagat Kamashamubha. Real wealth, real security, real opulence means have a piece of land, grow your food on that land, have a cow or two for dairy products. Keep your kids close, your relatives, all within a certain walking distance. Provided you treat what God has given us with reverence and not overstep yourself to improve upon what God has given you. Plain living, high thinking. There is enough built into this globe on which we live to supply the necessities of life to 10, 15, 20, 100 times the population. Gandhi said it, there's enough to supply everyone's need, but there's not enough to supply everyone's greed. And even though we have been greedily exploiting the world for several centuries, it still keeps coming up with the goods. It still provides for our excessive, our greed-infused, greed-suffused consciousness. It still provides for motor cars and airplanes, submarines, cruise ships, exclusive resorts. And it supplies all these things until it doesn't. In other words, God is giving us leeway. He's giving us grace. He's basically acting to fulfill our materialistic, self-centered, greedy desires up to a certain point, because he doesn't want to cut us off. He's always hopeful that will scale things down, will scale down our material appetites, ambitions, and will revive our spiritual consciousness. He's always hopeful against all signs to the contrary. The parent is always hopeful that even though the child's temperature is rising, 99, 100, 101, 102, 103, the parent is always hopeful that some or other the process will reverse itself and the temperature will go down again. So Lord, he supplies our greed. He's supplying our greed to a large extent, and not bringing the Holocaust, the karmic reaction, which we so richly deserve, because he hopes that we'll get it. And the members of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness have got it, thanks to Om Bhaganati Marandasa, thanks to Krishna's representative coming through the disciplic session and from the spiritual world, Srila Prabhupada and all the previous acharyas. And they're also members of other religious groups who also get it. You know, the creation of the Lord is here to supply us, to maintain us, to support us, but it's not here for exploitation. You can live very happily, very comfortably, even lavishly in this material world without motor cars, without airplanes, without luxury resorts, without drugs, and all of the excesses which have been created by byproducts of a materialistically self-centered civilization. Not only has Krishna supplied all the basic necessities of life, but he has created bodies beyond our wildest imaginations. I was asked at a forum one time, what's the significance of the peacock? And I said, with its indigo chest and its beautiful tail feathers, right now our peacocks the mating season is over. There have been 7 baby peacocks as a result of this spring's hatchings. We have a white peacock that has 4 brown babies. We have another brown peahen who has 2 babies, and we have a third peahen that has 1 baby. And they're all healthy, and they're all growing, and they wander the property without any particular fear of human beings. Visitors to the property are amazed that these peahens and their babies go about their business without being particularly concerned that human beings will harass them. But what is the significance of the peacock, especially the male who's so beautiful? It is that God is an artist, and not just an artist, but he's an effusive artist. If you want to characterize God, we talk about an individual, and we want to kind of describe that individual in such a way as we can understand what his driving force is, what his defining qualities are. So you cannot help, when you look at the creation of the Lord, and when you're drawing inferences about the Creator from the creation, tell me if I'm wrong, you cannot help but conclude that God, the Creator, is a mad creator. He can't even control himself. He's so into creation that he does it unlimitedly, abundantly, with unimaginable variety. Why is the peacock as beautiful as it is? Is it just for some pragmatic purpose? Does it have something to do with the balance of species, the law of survival, the law of the jungle, the survival of fittest? No, it's just an over and above expression of God's creative impulse, which he cannot seem to even control. We have millions and millions of species of beetles, for example. I've heard there's 6,500 species of beetles. No, 65,000 species of beetles alone, or insects, multi-legged insects. From a practical point of view, wouldn't 10,000 or 8,000 or 6,000 or 2,000 be enough from a point of practicality, keeping the balance in nature? But God had 65,000 species of beetles. As a creator, he's abundant. He's effusive. He's expressive. He's unlimited. But we described this material as a prison house earlier, but from what we know of prison houses, they're very stark. They're very pragmatic. When the government earmarks funds to build a prison, they don't add funds for state-of-the-art weight room, treadmills, a swimming pool, a sauna, a whirlpool, special showers with hot water and a lot of pressure, nozzle pressure. A prison house is the bare bones. It's the minimum. It's the minimum. The water trickles out of the shower head. There's no swimming pool. There's no sauna. The food is terrible. The smells are awful. They don't have a cleaning service. They don't have air fresheners. But when God creates for his disobedient, envious parts and parcels, even though it's an inferior creation made of matter, even though it's temporary, even though there's inbuilt at birth, death, disease, and old age, even though, having said there's food for all the species, some of them are food for others, even though there's that, still, this material world, even it's a prison house, because it's created by God, the irrepressible creator, it becomes very attractive to us. We've failed to identify it as a prison house. You know, we see all the beautiful spots. When I go on my treadmill in the morning, there's these videos on YouTube talks about beautiful scenes all over the world. And they just scroll one after another, after another, after another. Waterfalls and oceans and jungles, overshadowing forest paths and tunnels of trees, uh, flowers and fauna and all kinds of creatures. This is only one planet. It's just one dot in a universe, which is itself one dot amongst millions and millions of universes, which in itself is no more substantial than a cloud in the spiritual world. And yet this world, this prison house, and the pleasures that are here are so abundantly provided by the Lord that even great saints and sages and demigods themselves become enamored. They come to think of this world as all in all. They can't imagine that there's a much greater world, an effulgent world where there's no need of sunlight or moonlight or electricity, an eternal world beyond the pale of this material world. That even though it's a prison house, God has created it so caringly, so lovingly, and so lavishly that we forget that we don't see the forest for the trees. We forget that it is only a reflection, is only a shadow of the spiritual world. We become enamored with the trees and we forget about the forest. You go on the Discovery Channel and you, as well as seeing beautiful scenes of all different types and descriptions, you can also go on other channels called the Discovery Channel, where you see fish that can make themselves invisible to their enemies. You see predators can blend into the background, no matter, you see them in changing backgrounds, and you can't, the naked eye cannot distinguish between the predator and the background into which it's melded. There are fish that can blind the eyes of their attackers. There are other fish that can swim inside the jaw of a shark, having paralyzed the jaw. The shark cannot close its jaw because of the secretions of the fish. 8,400,000 species of life spread throughout the various universes, all attesting to the unlimited palette, the unlimited creative ability, the unlimited artistic expertise of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is not only giving us bodies and 8,400,000 species, but he's giving us residences, some of us in the water, some of us in the air, some of us in trees, some of us in jungles, some of us on the ground, some of us underground, some of us with houses and palaces and resorts and hotels and office buildings and multi-rise. And then food, there's food for each and every living being. Every living being has its food. The hog enjoys eating stool out of the open sewers in India. You look at the hogs in the sewers, and they're chewing, and they've got big smiles on their faces. And in fact, the stool has a lot of carbohydrates, a lot of energy. And one man's food is another man's poison. One's eating mangoes and the other's eating stool, but they're getting the sustenance they need. And there are so many pleasures in the prison house. They're beautiful amongst the pigs. They're beautiful female pigs and they're handsome male pigs. The llamas, we see so much drama going on between the llamas here. The llamas have their own things flying back and forth, psychologies, thought, who's dominant, who's going to mate with whom. It's dizzying. It's dizzying. They're just llamas, you know, and their bodily functions are reduced to just a few actions, one of which is sex life, the other's eating, the other's sleeping, the other's defending. So their whole life is reduced to these four things: eating, sleeping, mating, defending. But especially with regard to mating, which also spills over into defending, which also has its effects in terms of eating also, there's so much drama. There's so much psychologically that goes on in that herd to determine who gets the girl or which girl gets the guy. It's mind-boggling. This prison house of the material world, there's nothing simple about it. If it was simple, we wouldn't be ensnared. We wouldn't be here since millions and millions of births. You've heard me tell this story before, but maybe to make a slightly different point. If God just created simply, we'd come, we'd take one look, and we'd go. There was that commercial about Southwest Airlines where a girl comes off of a plane with something in her eye. She can't see very well. Everything's blurred. So she goes into a restroom to check a mirror. And now, while she's removing the mote from her eye in the mirror, she happens to look to her right, and there's a businessman looking at her curiously. And she looks to the left, and there's another businessman looking curiously. And she realized that in her impaired condition, she's wandered into the men's room instead of the women's room. And then the caption comes up, wouldn't you rather be somewhere else? So if God had created this material world pragmatically, simply, functionally, like the prison houses of which we're in this material world, we wouldn't linger here. We wouldn't loiter here. We wouldn't be enamored. But that's not who God is. He's not a bare bones creator. He's a lavish, exuberant, effervescent, effulgent creator. And that's why, even though it's a prison house, we cannot, on our own, without help, sort it out. We cannot, on our own powers, distinguish between substance and shadow, between reality and illusion, between that which is temporary and that which is eternal. Tamashir mam jyotir gamaha, mritu mam amritam garam. The best praise, the best benediction that you can give to somebody, which is also the highest accomplishment within this material world, is may you go from the darkness to the light. Asato mam sadgamaya. May you go from that which is temporary to that which is eternal. Mritum madamritum. May you go from death to immortality. Why would we wish that to people if we wouldn't have to wish that people if this material world was simple, basic, fundamental, because everyone would get it. But the fact is that no one gets it because God's creative powers, whether you're talking about the spiritual world or the material world, are beyond our ability to conceive them. They are inconceivable. Achinta koye bhavana times. Nobody can discern the truth behind this material world because God's creative energies, whether they be material, are beyond our conception, beyond our ability to conceive. They're beyond our thinking power. They're beyond our argument, our logic, our philosophical speculation. None of that can touch that which is inconceivable, to the point that we can't even understand this material world, which is insignificant compared to the spiritual world. So how can we comprehend what is beyond? For that, we require a spiritual master. If you want to see the light, you have to take shelter of someone who can see. A blind man cannot lead you to the sun. Andaya tandere upaniyamana. The blind, leading the blind, they'll all fall in a ditch. You need one person with sight, with vision, who can lead you out of the darkness into the light. And that's why it says in the Bhagavad Gita, you must learn the truth by approaching a self-realized soul. He can impart knowledge unto you because he has seen the truth. In the great prayer, the original primeval prayer, which is chanted at every yajna, every sacrifice, called the Purusha Shukta, one of the verses, Vedahame tam Purusham Mahantam Adityavanam Tamashashtu Parat. Tamasha means this dark material world, which, as we said, has its attractive features. It is infinitely, unlimitedly alluring, despite the fact that it is dark, artificially illuminated, that it is insignificant compared to Aditya Varnam, the eternally effulgent spiritual world. Tameva vidvam amrita iha bhavanti na anya panta vidyate. The translation is this great Purusha, God, who alone is beyond this material world, brilliant like the sun, beyond darkness, may his effulgence destroy ignorance within my heart, and may I thus attain immortality in this very birth. By the grace of God, just like we don't see without the grace of the sun, the eyes are useless were it not for the sun in the sky. Without the sun in the sky, the eyes would do me no good. So it's the sun by which I see, not these eyes. And so it is God, the great Purusha, who lies beyond this dark material world, who is himself brilliant like the sun. It is his blessings. It is by his grace that I will come to understand the difference between light and shadow, temporary and eternal, the material world and the spiritual world. Only through God's grace can these things be known. And the only way that you can get God's grace is through devotion. And the only way that you can cultivate devotion is by devoting yourself to a servant of a servant of a servant of a servant of the Lord. Therefore, Gajendra has come to the right point. Though this pastime started out with him being drunk and intoxicated with eroticism and attachment to his wives and his children and his own powerful body and his position in the heavenly planets, Gajendra has admitted that he's been misled. And he was madly enamored of this material world and the pleasures of the prison house. But now Krishna has very kindly approached him as the crocodile, latched onto his leg and thrust him up to a higher level of reality. And in this heightened consciousness, aware of the devotional service he had performed in his previous life, Gajendra is saying, Lord, you are my only savior. You are my only shelter. You are the only way that I will get transcendental knowledge so that I may extricate myself and my loved ones from this darkness. Ya anya pantai anayatidi. There is no other way. There is no other way. There is no other way to get freedom from material entanglement, repeated birth, death, disease, and old age, to get extricated from all the miseries of this material world, many of which are created by ourselves in ignorance of our true home, than to take shelter at the lotus feet of Vedaham Hum Purusham Aditya Varnam Tamashampache. Oh, he who has created this material world, created abundantly and lavishly and open-handedly, but who nevertheless stands apart from this material world and is counting the days till you and I will wake up, take advantage of his love and his wisdom so we can get out of this material world and go back home, back to Godhead. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Okay, nice comments here, going from top to bottom. Baker, Nevada, we speculated on that already. From Lilavati, and Brent gives us a hearty Hare Krishna. By Bobby's here. Oh, Great Basin National Park. Okay. So Baker, Nevada is in the Great Basin National Park. Good to know. Atmatama Prabhu, all the way from South Africa. Hari Bo. I talked with devotees from South Africa on a Zoom call a couple of weeks ago on behalf of Bhakti Marg Swami. I took one of his classes. They were thinking maybe of bringing me there for a Festival of Colors someday. I might meet you in person. And of course, if you ever come to America, please visit us here in Spanish Fork. Patri was amazing. We were sitting on the bench. I had a macaw on my knee. There were baby llamas about, a beautiful evening breeze, wafting, rustling the leaves in our many cottonwood trees. We looked out on a setting sun, spectacular sky, somewhat similar to the one that's in the background. And Prajji was shaking his head. You know, he said, as I was planning my itinerary, my tour of America, he said, I wasn't even thinking of coming to Spanish Fork. I had no awareness of Spanish Fork or Salt Lake City. It was an Amamrita, or Nepali Pujari, who worships the feet on which the dust under the feet of Patri. He insisted to us and to Patri that Patri make time on his American tour to stop in Salt Lake City on Spanish Fork. And Patri said, I didn't realize that this was going to be the highlight of my tour. I had no idea that there were two magnificent temples built by Bobby from the ground up here in Utah. He says, I'll definitely come back, and you have to come to Nepal also. You have to come to Nepal. So Lilavati tells us a little bit more about Great Basin National Park and Baker, Nevada, in as much as it has the darkest skies in the nation, reminding her of Krishna, whose color is like the monsoon cloud during the rainy season. Natasha, Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. We did go chanting downtown Salt Lake City. I forgot to tell you about that. We walked 10 blocks, I think. Main Street, State Street. We went in through City Creek Mall. I'll follow Agni Dev anywhere. His voice is so divine. I'll follow him anywhere. Like Bobby tells us, Great Basin National Park is on the border. I suppose it would be the border of Nevada and Montana, I'm guessing. A little bit more information. Lilavati says, Baker, Nevada is perfect for star watching. Saw hundreds of shooting stars while she was sleeping out under those stars. The stars apparently were part of the Perseid, Perseid meteor shower. Sundari Priya checks in with a, please accept my obeisances, all glories to Prabhupada. Good morning. Brent, this looks like a poem. It's like we've got a poem here. We get more than we deserve, but we are meant to curb and conserve so we can live here for a reason rather than just thrive for a season. All the opulence will go away, returning to dust and clay, but our eternal connection will always be there if we scrub away the clay by devotion, love, chanting, and prayer. I always have to read these twice because one reading can't really appreciate the depth of these things with one reading. We get more than we deserve, but we are meant to curb and conserve so that we can live here for a reason rather than just thrive for a season. All of the opulence will go away, returning to dust and clay, but our eternal connection will always be there if we scrub away the clay by devotion, love, chanting, and prayer. Another thing that sticks in my mind from Patri's presentations over the weekend. He comes from Ukraine. So he says the city he lived in, I forget what the name was, is gone. It's gone. He calls back to his friends in Ukraine and he asks about the city in which he grew up, in which he played. There were parks and playgrounds and high rises, and there were office buildings, and there were suburbs where the more wealthy people lived, and there were middle-class suburbs where there were 1 or 2 bedroom houses, and then there were the less, the 1 bedroom houses that were old, and all of that variety was there in his youth. And he calls back to get details. How is everything now? Where is this? Who is this? What is that? And they say it's all gone. It's all gone. Not just the buildings and the parks, the reservoirs, the gymnasiums, the schools, the places of worship. Not only is that all gone, but the people are all gone. Hundreds of thousands of people dead, bombed in their apartment houses on the street. So when you have a normal impulse, if you've been abroad for a long time, you call every 6 months and you catch up. You talk for some time, and so-and-so's done this, and so got a new job, and so had another 3rd kid, but when he calls back to catch up, to get the details, there are no details. It's gone. People are gone. Everything's gone. And he says, you people in Europe and America, you think it will never happen here. You think, oh, that's happening in Gaza. That's happening in Ukraine. It will happen here sooner than you think. He says, it's already started. So what will you do when all of your various paths of infatuation and distraction, or all of the ways and means by which you fritter away your life throughout the course of an ordinary day, when they're all gone? There's no internet, You have no place to live. You have no food. You have no place, beautiful paths to walk. You have no place to shelter except a bomb shelter. What will you do? You better get serious. Better not fritter away your life, splintering conscious and going astray. Go back to the source, the root of creation, the ever-existing youth, the absolute truth who plays upon his flute. We have to be serious and diligent about practicing Krishna consciousness because as enamoring and as distracting and as entertaining as this material world can be, it's Maya. Don't be duped. Don't be sucked in. Time of reckoning will come to all of us. And at that time, we have to be able to pass the test and with a clear heart, peaceful mind, chant Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Lilavati says, and this is a good note to end here, she also gives us a little poem, and we'll go to Rob as well. This vision is a prison, a creation, a diversion. Let us be averse to this perverse material universe and return to God. That's what I was trying to say. You said it more concisely. This vision is a prison, a creation, a diversion. Let us be averse to this perverse material universe and return to Godhead. Beautiful. Short and sweet. And speaking of short and sweet, do you have something for us to cap things off this morning, Rob?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Haribo.
I do. Don't put your faith in a temporary thing. It will always end in pain.
Mm-hmm. Don't put your faith in a temporary thing. It will always end in pain. Truer words never spoken.
Don't be proud of your cloud.
I could have saved 45 minutes and just said that, and we'd be done within 30 seconds.
Then it wouldn't have sunk in as well. Fool is ungrateful.
Mm-hmm. Someone who's ungrateful is a great fool.
To be freed from greed and still have all we need, we must nurture our bhakti seed.
Wonderful. Well spoken.
What do you infer from creation about the creator and his inclination?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
We lose the forest through the trees when we think we're here to be pleased.
What was that again about trees?
We lose the forest through the trees when we think we are here to be pleased.
Oh, okay. We lose the forest through the trees when we think we're here to be pleased. Nice. Nice.
Haribol.
Yeah, I think you've hit the nail on the head, 5 times this morning? Please do send us those. We've missed posting your comments. And yeah, thanks everyone. Good start to our week, I hope. And we'll see you tomorrow for Transcendental Tuesday, as well as Wisdom Wednesday. It's the weekend. I'll be going to Vancouver, and I'll be traveling Monday, but I'm going to hope to get onto my phone Monday morning and be with you again without any interruption. In the meantime, chant Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Rama Rama, Hare